Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Laguna Seca. Jack Tranter provided me a video of a lap. The sound is not very good, but I think hearing my voice will be plenty enough for you. We're going to run through a lap here real quick, just talk about some of the basic points. I know we race multiple cars in this series, so it may not directly translate to your Jetta or your Kia, but it should give you a nice baseline if you're not really sure where to go, or maybe one of the tricks in this car will carry over to something else. I don't know. But hopefully this helps, and if it does, then we can do more like it. All right, let's start off with talking about turn one. The numbering system here is kind of funky, but we'll just stick with what's given to us. So turn one is this left-hand kink on the front straightaway. Again, not really a corner, but it does help in a race situation to take more of a defensive line, and it could help in a qualifying situation to maybe go a little bit wider so you can be straighter for longer as you approach your braking point for turn two. So Jack takes it very tight, and at this point you want to be looking for your brake mark for turn two. Turn two is a double apex left-hander. It is very advantageous to keep tight through the whole thing, not swing out very wide like you might be tempted to get a good exit. So let's start at the braking point here. We have so you have your marks. In most corners here you have all of your marks, but there is some more specific stuff you can look for. Here I like to look for, there's a white line that's painted along the track right here where my cursor is. And you want to be 100% on the brakes at that point. Sometimes it's a little earlier, sometimes it's a little later, but that is your general reference. And also helps to have the right side of the car off of the dark pavement as you begin braking to just give yourself a little bit more room. And you'll find that to be a speed secret, I guess, around most of this track, is using the entry curbs for your braking and for your turn in, whether it be an entry curb or just some access road like we have here. So another thing here for turn two, it does help if you think about it as almost a beeline from your braking point to the first apex. Try to work the car down to that apex curbing as you start braking. Don't try to set up wide to make this into one big hairpin corner. It just doesn't work. Aim for your apex just after the red curbing there. That's another very, very good reference point for this track. Use the red curbing, plus or minus some distance. So as we see, he turned in really tight. He's going to keep it tight all the way around. He only keeps the car off of the inside of the track, maybe a car width or two. Second gear. Again, very important to stay tight, and very, very, very important to hit that second apex curb. If you don't, you end up losing a lot of time between turns 2 and 3. And you see Jack, he's going to track all the way out. He's going to use all of the curbing and almost go off into the dirt. Many laps we do go into the dirt. Okay, turn 3 is a pretty straightforward 90-degree right-hander. Again, like we talked about before, use the entry curbing. Drive on the entry curbing for your turn in, for your braking. It's a very light brake, light touch, and the brake mark is going to be somewhere around the midpoint of the 1 and the 2 braking marks. And your turn-in point is going to be just before the, I'm gonna call these gray sections here, these entry curbs, I'm gonna call them the end cap. So you're going to be departing that entry curb just as you pass the end cap on the back side of that entry curb. Like I said, light brake and wait. Wait to get on the gas until you know that you're going to hit your right front tire with the same steering input. You're going to hit that right front tire on the apex curbing just after the red bumpers. Don't hit the red bumpers. It's not going to kill you in this corner, but it will in other corners on the track. Again, Jack has no choice, and this is a goal that you should set, is to have no choice but to use the exit curbs. No choice but to get all the way to the edge of the dirt. You should not be able to manipulate the car in any other way. When we're approaching turn 4, again, use that entry curb. Put the left side tires on that entry curb, so to give yourself a little more distance to enter the corner. And again, we have these end caps here that you can use as a reference point to where you need to be departing that curb or where you need to be turning in. So you're at the top of third gear. There's a lot of engine braking going on, which means that if you do a gradual lift off the throttle as you turn in, the front end will bite down pretty hard. And as soon as you can tell that with no other steering input, you're going to hit your right front tire on that red bumper apex curb. As soon as you know that that's going to happen, then you can start working back into the power. Again, just a lift between the 1 and the 2 as you turn in. If you time it right with your turn, you'll see, and not feel, but you will see the front end bite down, and you will see the car point toward that apex point, and at that point you know you can get back to full throttle. Again, he has no choice but to use all of that exit. A lot of times we use a little bit more, but try to minimize your off tracks. And we're seeing a theme here. Again, the entry curbing. Put the right side tires on the entry curbing. It gives you more space. Now at this point, again, look for your braking point. You have these nice 3-2-1s here. You also have some other reference points. You can use this white line. That's what I like to use. 100% on the brakes at that white line. And start turning in well before this end cap. So you have a lot of banking here in turn 6. Is that right? 6? 5? I don't know. But you have a lot of banking here, and it's uphill. So as you get more into the corner, you're going to find that you have more grip. So in order to optimize your entry speed while still getting a good exit, you can turn in earlier because of that banking and because of that hill. So don't try to be super turn in late here. Turn in early, work the car down at the apex curb. You should be wide open on the throttle, just about that red bumper. And I probably have the car fully inside with the left side tires almost at the dirt, just about here. It's a later apex. It's after the red bumper. It's kind of strange because I feel like it's an earlier turn in. It's also a later apex, but that banking and that uphill helps you to get that later apex still while carrying a lot of entry speed. Now this corner up here catches a lot of people, including me, off guard. It's really hard to get consistent, especially when you're following people, so it's very important to develop a lot of reference points. I think that the best thing you can do, and I think when you're behind somebody you can usually see these 3-2-1 markers, is just back off a little bit. This is what I like to do. Maybe somebody else can point something else out that works, but I like to back off just a little bit so I'm sure that I can see these marks. I'm aiming for the 2, this little 2 guy up here. I'm aiming for the 2. I want to begin to start turning in at the 2 with a lift as I turn to help give the front end of the car a little more grip. And it's a very slow turn in. You're going to think, oh, I'm turning at the 2, I'm turning in way too early, but you start turning in slowly just to work the car into the corner. You don't want to shock the tires by turning in later where you think you should. So start turning in a little early, get the car to set down on the right side at the 2. Aim for the apex. Do not hit the red bumper. We'll get up there here. I'll play up here. So see Jack, he's got the wheel turn. He just passed the 2 and he's already got the wheel turn. He's looking for this little red. You can see it a little bit here. He's trying to get to that as close as he can, but not hit it, because that's the one that's going to damage your car in your race. This is 4th gear, maybe 3rd if there's a drastic mistake, but 4th is ideal. And he did it again. Great job using all the track on the exit. He maximized that corner. So as you climb the hill of the corkscrew, it actually is pretty important where you position the car, because you want to set yourself up for a nice straight braking line into the corkscrew. So stay all the way to the left on this curb here. I think they actually call this turn 7. So just keep your left side tires on this curb. Stay left as long as you can in order to aim the car straight when you go for the brakes at this marker up here. And you can see it, so just keep planning ahead. You can see this 3, plan ahead. As soon as you're climbing this hill, this thought should be out of your head. You should be looking for the 3. Go to the brakes hard at the 3, and you see how Jack, he kept the car left. He made a hard turn over to the right so that he could line the car straight up, almost parallel with the right side of the track when you crest the hill. It's blind, so you just kind of have to use the 3. You have to use your turn in for turn 7 to determine how your path is going to be when you cross over this 3 mark and you're 100% on the brakes, because it's going to be really hard to turn the car after that point. So this is one of the tougher ones. Second gear, ideally second gear, brake to 3, shift down to second, and as you get toward the end of this curb here, on the right, the entry curb, use that end cap as a reference. Just before the end cap, start turning it in. It might seem really early, but there's actually some curb here you can cut and some dirt that won't, as long as you don't put the car too far off into it, it won't give you any penalty. And just be patient. So you may be thinking about here, where do I go? I can't see the track. So actually what I found is this tree here, the one in the middle, I guess if you consider these to be the outer trees, this tree in the middle here, if you continue to drive straight and you hit the front of the car right in that tree, then when the car's lined up at that point, then you know that you can straighten out the wheel and actually probably start turning to the right to get down the hill. So use this tree to your advantage. It really helps so you can develop a reference point for that blind second apex. Another little trick here would be, the second gear start, actually I feel helps get the car turned in. It helps you accelerate initially, especially if you miss it a little bit. It gives you a little bit of cushion for error. But second gear initially, and then actually Jack taught me this, if you as soon as you start to drop down the hill, do a short shift into third, because if you don't short shift into third, you're going to be really high up in the RPMs in second gear when you drop down the hill, and it just really upsets the car, especially in the first couple laps when the tires are cold. Again, here's a little bit of a balancing act. There's not too many reference points other than, again, I like to use these curbs. You can develop some point of reference off of that. But there's also this darker colored pavement where the cars usually drive that gives you kind of a path to shoot for in your corner. It's third gear, no brakes, just a long lift. It's a long lift, and just like we talked about in turn 4, turn 5, when you're doing that lift and you see the front of the car point toward that apex, that's when you know you can go wide open. Even if you can't see the exit yet, when you're pointed at that apex and you know that you're going to hit it for sure, you can go wide open throttle. So third gear, lift, wait, then wide open throttle. Use this curb here as a path to form your initial trajectory into the corner, and you'll see that lines up quite a lot with this with the darker pavement. It's very important to get to the apex here. If you're committed to throttle and then you realize you're not going to hit the apex, you're probably going to go off track, so you should make a correction. See, standard mid apex, right at the red bumper, right on the blue and white stripes. You should be shifting into fourth right at the exit curb here. Again, get the car back over to the left as quickly as possible. The sooner the better, so that you can set up so you're not making this really harsh transition left to right. You want to get straight for at least a brief moment so you can tap the brakes between the 1 and the 2 to get turned in for the second to last corner. So aim for a braking mark about the midpoint between the 1 and the 2. Downshift to third. You should be departing from that entry curb just before the end cap, and there's quite a drop in the elevation just as you turn in, which will actually help the car rotate if you don't get back to the gas too early. So again, brake, lift off the brake, wait, let the car coast, and when you see that the front end of the car is pointed right at your point of apex that you've initially decided, then you can get back to the power, and it should take you all the way out. Let me back up a little bit there. That didn't really work the way I wanted it to. See, Jack's counter steering there, just the way that the transition works and the drop in the elevation. It actually turned more than he wanted to, so he had to make a correction so that he didn't hit that red bumper and really send him off to the left side. left side. I don't even know if I should talk about this corner because I'm so terrible here, but Jack's actually pretty good, and he's taught me a few things. Again, pretty basic stuff. Set up parallel to the entry curb. Your braking point here, I would aim for just after the 2. If you go closer to the 1, you're probably going to end up too deep into the corner, and you're going to get a terrible run into the front straight. So it looks like he's turning in just before and again, you have the end cap here. You're aiming for an apex at the red bumper or just after. If you can do a later apex here and still have a decent entry speed, decent braking point, do it, because you'll get a great run of the front straight and it'll set you up for a pass into turn 1, turn 2. And you really don't want to overspeed this corner. You don't want to be too hard on the brakes, too close to the apex, or else the car won't turn. So you want to get your braking point pretty conservative. You want to do a nice, smooth, slow brake release before the apex so that you're able to get there and actually accelerate off the corner. And that's it. So a few things to pay attention to here. In this car specifically, it seems to be advantageous, at least on the baseline setup, to have more neutral time, more coasting time than you would think. So if you're turning into a corner and you think, wow, I'm going way too slow, I need to get back to the gas, that may not be the right thought to have. You may want to stay off the gas longer. It actually helps you get to the apex, and then when you do finally decide to pick up the gas, you're able to stay on it 100% and not have to do a lift from the apex of the corner to the exit, which really slows you down. That's about it. Thanks for the video, Jack. Thanks for hosting the series, Frank. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, just let me know, or any suggestions on how to make this better. I already have a few of my own, but if anybody can help me, I would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.